better. Okay? It is proven. We tend to work better when we're not under stressful environments, or we're not putting ourselves in a stressful state, because our cortisol is rising like crazy, and we're throwing our body off, so our mind is off, so we're not thinking as quickly. We're thinking in fear. If this isn't perfect, what will happen? And then there's this big catastrophe if it is not perfect. And the crazy thing is, what I realized, started to pause and realize, wow, even though it didn't go exactly how I planned, a big catastrophe did not occur. So we kind of have to reflect on that. That's the reason why we have to pause and slow ourselves down, because we talked about hypervigilance yesterday, and our mind seems to go here, there, and everywhere. And working out of fear and panic, and making decisions and making sure everything's right, because it is a response to not wanting to experience pain again. So no matter how long you were in that abusive situation, you are programmed to hurry up and react so you don't experience pain. You are trying to eliminate that. You are trying to please. So this increases the negative self-talk. If you don't do it perfectly, you get down on yourself. And what's going to happen every time? You're going to hate yourself because it wasn't perfect, because nobody's perfect and it won't be perfect. But you know what? That is the purpose of us having this episode. So you reverse those thoughts from being a perfectionist to someone that is just high achieving because they love what they do and they have a zeal and they have a passion for it. And yes, you learn from the things that you done wrong, but you also encourage yourself and you become proud of yourself, of what you did complete and achieve. That's what we need to learn to do, is encourage ourselves. We were told so many times when we did try to encourage ourselves, or we were happy about an achievement in the beginning of an abusive relationship. Oh, don't be cocky. Oh, you're selfish. Oh, that wasn't that good. Their standards must be low. So you're beginning to be programmed to believing that whatever you do will never be good enough. Now, another consequence of negative self-talk is feelings of depression. Some research has shown that negative self-talk can lead to an exacerbation of feelings of depression. If left unchecked, this could be quite damaging. So yes, me personally, I definitely had feelings of depression, and I could not move. I could barely go to the restroom. I was so weighed down with all the negative self-talk. Everything had to be like it is. And life isn't like that. So if a tire blew out, I was freaking out beyond measure. I'm like, cause again, I'm like, oh, we don't have the money saved up for the tire. And we can't get along because the credit score is low. So you know what? I won't be able to go into work. And my husband won't be able to go into work. And so then guess what? We're both going to be fired from our jobs and we're going to be homeless. Goes right there. So you're depressed all the time because you're trying to work through and solve all the negative self-talk with solutions, but then you still don't feel like those solutions are good enough. So you're just going through this crazy merry-go-round of pain, depression, and anxiety. Okay. Another consequence of negative self-talk is relationship challenges. Whether the constant self-criticism makes you seem needy and insecure, or you turn your negative self-talk into more general negative habits that bothers others, a lack of communication, and even a playful amount of criticism can take a toll. Yes. Yeah. just constantly in a relationship, just putting yourself down all the time, the other person feels as if they have to lift you up every single time. They feel like they have to lift you up, and that becomes draining on them because they're trying to be a good partner. But then it comes to a point where it's like, if you don't know who you are, how are we going to join together? So that's just something to think about. You know, this sounds simplistic, but research has shown that positive self-talk is a great predictor of success. Now, how to minimize negative self-talk? Catch your critic. Learn to notice when you're being self-critical so you can begin to stop. For example, notice when you say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to a good friend or child. Remember that thoughts and feelings aren't always reality. Thinking negative thoughts about yourself may feel like astute observations, but your thoughts and feelings about yourself can definitely not be considered accurate information. Your thoughts can be skewed like everyone else's, subject to biases and the influence of your moods. Give your inner critic a nickname. There was once a Saturday Night Live character known as Debbie Downer. She would find the negative in any situation. If your inner critic has this dubious skill as well, you can tell yourself, Debbie Downer is doing her thing again. When you think of your inner critic as a force outside of yourself and even give it a goofy nickname, it not only more easily to realize that you don't have to agree, but it becomes less threatening and more easy to see how ridiculous some of your critical thoughts can be. Contain your negativity. If you find yourself engaging in negative self-talk, it helps to contain the damage that a critical inner voice can cause by only allowing it to criticize certain things in your life or be negative for only an hour in your day. This puts a limit on how much negativity can come from the situation. Change negativity to neutrality. When engaging in negative self-talk, you may be able to catch yourself, but it can sometimes be difficult to force yourself to stop a train of thought in its tracks. It's often far easier to change the intensity of your language. I can't stand this becomes, this is challenging. I hate becomes, I don't like, and even I don't prefer. When your self-talk uses more gentle language, much of its negative power is muted as well. Another thing, cross-examine your inner critic. One of the damaging aspects of negative self-talk is that it often goes unchallenged. After all, it's a running commentary going on in your head. Others may not be aware of what you're saying to yourself and thus can't tell you how wrong you are. It's far better to catch your negative self-talk and ask yourself how true it is. The vast majority of negative self-talk is an exaggeration, and calling yourself on this can help to take away the damaging influence of negative self-talk. Think like a friend. When our inner critic is at its worst, it can sound like our worst enemy. Often we'll say things to ourselves in our heads that we never say to a friend. Why not reverse this? And when you catch yourself speaking negatively in your head, make it a point to imagine yourself saying this to a treasured friend. If you know you wouldn't say it this way, think of how you share your thoughts with a good friend or what you'd like a good friend to say to you. This is a great way to shift your self-talk in general. Yes. And I love that this on Very Well Minded Calm spoke about this, because that is definitely one tactic I use is would I say this to my husband? Would I say this to my sister? Would I say this to my friends? Would I say this to my children? You know? So if I wouldn't say it to them, why am I saying this to myself? It definitely catches you. So they are absolutely right on that. Now, shift your perspective. Sometimes looking at things in the long term can help you realize that you may be placing too great an emphasis on something. For example, you may ask yourself, is something you're upset by will really matter in 5 years or 10? Another way to shift perspective is to imagine that you are painting out and looking at your problems from a great distance. Even thinking of the world as a globe and of yourself as a tiny, tiny person on this globe can remind you that most of your worries aren't as big as they seem. This can often minimize the negativity, fear, and urgency and negative self-talk. Say it aloud. Sometimes when you catch yourself thinking negative thoughts in your mind, simply say them aloud can help. Telling a trusted friend what you're thinking about can often lead to a good laugh and shine a light on how ridiculous some of your negative self-talk can be. Other times, it can at least bring support. Even saying some negative self-talk phrases around under your breath can remind you how unreasonable and unrealistic they sound, and remind you to give yourself a break. Stop that thought. For some, simply stopping negative thoughts in their tracks can be helpful. This, unsurprisingly, is known as thought stopping and can take the form of snapping a rubber band on your wrist, visualizing a stop sign, or simply changing to another thought when a negative train of thought enters your mind. This can be helpful with repetitive or extremely critical thoughts like I'm no good or I'll never be able to do this, for example. Replace the bad with some good. This is one of the best routes to combating negative self-talk, replacing it with something better. Take a negative thought and change it to something encouraging that's also accurate. Repeat until you find yourself needing to do it less and less often. This works well with most bad habits, replacing unhealthy food with healthy food, for example, and it's a great way to develop a more positive way of thinking about yourself and about life. Yes, they are on it, okay? So these are great tips. What we spoke about in different episodes, what really assisted me was listening to motivational speaking and motivational speakers that will get into you, okay, about being negative about yourself. They will let you know, no, it's not happening. You be positive. And so I love listening to motivational speaking in the morning. It's a great pick-me-up. Biblical meditations during the night, giving you positive self-affirmations, really assist you. Look up stress meditations or anxiety meditations or depression meditations and just have them playing while you sleep. And you can see what works for you. Certain sounds and meditations may trigger you. Certain ones may not. So what you can do is test them out and put the ones that don't trigger you on a playlist so that you can have it for at least, 8 hours or however long you sleep playing so you can feel relaxed. And release those negative thoughts and feel refreshed waking up. It helped me so much. It does not make any sense because I'll have panic attacks thinking about the next day. I had so much, I had multiple, I'm trying to describe it. In my brain, it was like a sea of negative self-thoughts with horrible effects at the end of them. that were those fear-based fantasies at the end of them. And I could not go to sleep, almost having panic attacks, because I'm